Hello everybody and welcome back to another video from us here at Facts Ntertainment. We want to start this video with thanking all of our subscribers for supporting our channel, and if you have not subscribed to this channel yet, then please do and hit the notification bell to stay updated for upcoming content. There are stories of those lucky few who have managed to cheat death and overcome some truly harrowing challenges. These people have shown their determination to survive and have lived to tell their unbelievable stories. In today's video, we will take a look at 10 occasions where people have beat the odds and survived unlikely situations. Aaron Ralston cut off his own arm to save his life. Next time you think you're having a bad day, take a minute to remember Aaron Ralston's 127 hours of hell. In 2003, Ralston went hiking near Robbers Roost in Utah in what should have been an uneventful journey. But then, near Blue John Canyon, Ralston slipped and dislodged a boulder. The 800-pound rock crushed and trapped his right arm, pinning it to the wall of a deep, narrow canyon. Realizing that he would never be found, he decided to cut off his own arm with a small, blunt blade and used a boulder to break the bone, letting him slip free. Although he spent 5.5 days trapped, it took a grueling 1 hour to amputate the arm. In 2011, he helped producers make a film based on his ordeal, aptly named 127 Hours. Today, Aaron continues to do challenging outdoor sports and works for wilderness preservation. Andy's plane crash. In October 1972, an Uruguayan Air Force twin turboprop Fairchild FH-227D was flying over the Andes carrying a rugby team from Montevideo, Uruguay to play a match in Santiago, Chile. Tragedy struck when the plane crashed into the mountains, killing 12 people, with another 11 dying by the end of the ordeal. What makes this story unbelievable is that 16 people were found alive a staggering 2 months later. So how did these 16 people survive? Well, faced with sub-zero temperatures and no food, they did what they had to do. Using razor blades and broken glass, they took flesh off of their dead, frozen teammates and ate it to stay alive. Anatoly Bugorsky survived a proton beam. Anatoly Bugorsky was a researcher at the Institute for High Energy Physics in Protvino-Bugorsky. But in 1978, while looking at a malfunctioning piece of equipment, the routine repair turned into horror as a proton beam shot through the back of his head and out of his nose. Miraculously, he survived the potent laser beam. When later asked about the incident, he described seeing a flash brighter than 1,000 suns, but he felt no pain. Anatoly might have survived, but he didn't get off lightly. He lost hearing in his left ear, suffers occasional seizures, and has paralysis in the left side of his face. Even stranger, while the right side of his face is wrinkled through getting older, the left side looks just as it did when he was hit by the proton beam in 1978. Railroad worker cut in two. The human body can survive a lot of things, but being cut in half isn't one of them. Well, Truman Duncan, a railroad switchman, defied the odds and has gone on to lead a fulfilling life, despite being cut in half after he fell from a train. When interviewed about the accident, he said, "It just felt like a monster. I couldn't get away from it, like it was just pulling me in and I'm pushing away, and I was cut in two." Duncan was dragged 75 feet, and when the train finally came to a stop, his lower body was mangled up within the wheels and mechanism of the train. With only one leg still attached by a single muscle, he remembered that he kept his cell phone on that side. Luckily, the cell phone still remained in his pocket, allowing him to call 911. He lost half his blood but was still clinging on to life. According to one of his doctors, he had been torn so horrifically that there was only one cell layer of tissue between his abdominal content that stopped them from spilling out. Duncan lost his legs but survived the horrific accident. Matthew Croucher jumps on a grenade. Soldiers sacrificing themselves by jumping onto grenades to save their comrades is something of a movie trope. But when it happened in real life to Matthew Croucher, it had a much happier ending. Matthew Croucher was serving with the British Royal Marines in Afghanistan in 2008 when he took part in a raid on a suspected bomb factory. During the search, he felt something press against his leg. A moment later, he saw a grenade hit the floor by his feet. After warning the rest of his patrol, he jumped onto the grenade that was only moments from exploding. Miraculously, no one was hurt, not even Matthew, who had rolled over onto the grenade using his backpack and body armor to protect him from the blast. When the grenade exploded, the lance corporal was thrown across the room with his backpack shredded and on fire. Although his body armor and helmet had been peppered with grenade fragments, he walked away with nothing more than a headache and a nosebleed. Anna Bogenholm freezes in a frozen lake and survives. When a person's heart stops beating and their body temperature falls to 40 degrees below normal, it's safe to assume they are dead. But when Anna Bogenholm fell through the ice and her friends were unable to immediately pull her back out, she was lucky to find an air pocket that allowed her to keep breathing for around 40 minutes. Unfortunately, despite the air supply, the water was still ice cold, and before too long, she stopped moving. By the time she was finally freed, she had been under the water for 80 minutes, giving everyone the impression that the hypothermia had killed her. Fortunately, her friends weren't ready to give up on her and performed CPR anyway. Nearly 3 hours after the incident, she arrived at the hospital and was hooked up to a machine that took cold blood out of her body, heated it up, and pumped it back in again. Nothing happened for almost a full day, but then the next day, her heart started beating on its own, and 12 days after waking up, she had recovered. Caitlin Dubrow lost all her limbs to meningitis. When Caitlin Dubrow was just 18, she contracted bacterial meningitis, a vicious skin disease that began eating away at her limbs and skin. On the night before she was admitted to hospital, Caitlin had a bad headache and spent the night with intense fever, a bloated stomach, and continuous vomiting. Within the first 12 hours, her whole body had turned purple as the meningitis traveled around her bloodstream and began eating away at her limbs. The doctors began amputating parts to try and control the spread, but with it showing no signs of stopping, her arms and legs were cut shorter and shorter. Eventually, Caitlin was cured of the terrible illness, and despite her lack of arms, is now a beauty YouTuber, amassing a phenomenal 246,000 subscribers. She is an inspiration to all her fans and has proven that you can do anything if you put your mind to it. Phineas Gage, rod through the head. In most cases, getting impaled through the brain will result in death. Yet in 1848, railroad worker Phineas Gage survived getting impaled by a 3.5-foot rod that he had been using to pack a hole with explosives. As the 25-year-old turned to greet co-workers, an explosion in the hold shot the massive iron rod up through Gage's jaw, brain, and skull. The rod had traveled clean through his head, taking a chunk of mind with it. Gage lived for another 12 years and suffered from a drooping eyelid, seizures, dramatic mood swings, and cognitive problems. Harrison O'Connor surviving at sea. On May 28, 2013, divers went down 100 feet to the wreck of the Jaskin 4 in an attempt to recover bodies. Harrison O'Connor, the ship's cook, had been in the toilet when the boat capsized and tried to reach an emergency exit hatch, but failed. The ship began to fill with water and O'Connor was trapped inside. Miraculously, he found himself sealed in an air pocket while the ship sank. After 3 days of waiting, he thought he would never see land again. That's when he heard a knock. It turned out to be the sound of the divers working on the surface of the boat to gain entrance. Eventually, he was discovered and diving gear was brought to him. He had to spend 2 days in a decompression chamber, but he had survived an ordeal that his crewmates had not. The Endurance Expedition. Ernest Shackleton had braved the South Pole once and was ready to face it again in 1914. Setting out with a group of 28 men, they hoped to make it all the way across the continent, but instead became trapped in the ice as their ship, the Endurance, fell apart around them. Eventually, supplies began to dwindle and the men took to their lifeboats, floating to an island that took 14 days in bitter Antarctic seas to reach. From there, they had to mount another expedition to South Georgia Island, the nearest inhabited island nearly 1,000 miles from their original starting point. Despite multiple hardships, all 28 men survived. Life can be fragile and unbelievably tough. There is no end to the terrible situations we can find ourselves in. Still, if these stories tell you anything, it is that you can overcome unbelievable challenges with determination and some luck. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you would like to see more videos like this one, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Thanks for watching.